Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. A couple of you have already sent me comments saying you have conflicts, you couldn't attend. So this is being recorded and you'll get to see it on the LinkedIn platform. And my name is Tatiana Kolovou. I'm so glad that you're joining. And I have a fun session for us today. If you don't follow me on LinkedIn yet, please do follow this feed and we can stay connected. I do a lot of information and education relating to communication. I teach in one of the top ranked business schools, and I actually saw some of my students that joined in for today. One thing I want to say is you didn't get enough during the semester. So today I wanted to talk specifically about a topic that went crazy a couple of months ago. I publish the newsletter called Stronger. My thinking is using communication strategies to help you come across stronger and build strength in the workplace and in your working and everyday relationships. So I have the link there about the newsletter Stronger that said, don't talk to strangers and other communication rules that we learned as kids that hold us back. Well, I looked back at some of the statistics. I wrote them on a little post-it note. That post of the newsletter got over 9,000 views. Thank you. 38 of you shared it with your friends, 54 different comments, and over nearly 400 reactions. So I thought that that was important enough that it came up that it would be nice to have some conversation along this. So as I get started, please do feed into the comments. Let us know where you're coming in from, which part of the world. I'm originally from Athens, Greece, and I'm coming to you live from Bloomington, Indiana. It's crazy warm today for the midday of December. So let us know what the weather's like where you are. So as we get started, I'm going to use some interactive tools today, and I want you to pull out your phones or have a browser open to a website because I'm hoping to see how you will connect and how you'll interact. So let me see here. Kamal, thank you for being patient. And Sid, you were the one I wanted to say that this is being recorded as we go forward. So I've chosen about 4 to 5 rules that we have heard as kids that relate to us maybe holding back and being challenged with our communication. So as I run all different pieces here, I want to tell you a story. One of the comments, 54 comments, was a story from Martine. So good to see you, my friend. You were in a fantastic trip from what I saw on your social media. So one of the first things that I reported and I recorded on your newsletter was this concept of don't draw attention to yourself, right? So don't draw attention to yourself because you don't want to stand out, you don't want to stick out. And one of our readers of the newsletter said, I'm from Russia, and if you even use the word I, you're bragging, and that's looked down upon. By the way, you're going to, I'm sure, start asking what this app is and how do I have, oops, over here, how do I have my visuals? These are my good friends from the app, exactly as you hear it, MMHMM. And they actually saw me using this in one of the other LinkedIn lives. They reached out and they're like, you need a little hand holding. We need to coach you. So I took it because, hey, I'll take the feedback and I want to get better as we go forward. So, how many of you have heard this? Don't draw attention to yourself, right? Go ahead and respond. Let me see here. You do want to know that one of my kids has my phone and they're tasked with welcoming you. So, it's not me multitasking, not to this level, but that's really fun to see. Thank you for Satish. Thanks for jumping in from Germany. And Natalia, I know you're from Greece. I know where you are and where you live, my dear friend. So, how many of you have heard the term don't draw too much attention to yourself? I do a lot of work. Ooh, an IU Purdue participant. Did we have you in one of the immersion programs, Courtney? I'd love to know. Did you hear this as a child? Because a lot of the work that I do is also in cross cultural communication. And I do believe that much of what we hear and what influences the way we communicate has come from our upbringing and is influenced by our values and our beliefs and the environments that we've been around. Welcome, Christina, and welcome, Courtney and Javid, sorry. So I thought, and I'm going to share with you now a link, and I want you're going to get all excited. I use Slido, so you can go ahead and go to this link right away. But what I'd like for you to do is pull out your phones and look at this QR code, or go to Slido and enter this number on the .com. And this "don't draw attention to yourself" has a lot to do with values and beliefs of what we were brought up in, and a lot of the cultures we were raised in. Some of the cultures we were raised in are individualistic cultures. So we take care of our needs, and our needs supersede the needs of the group. And that's where independence and autonomy are described in this culture specifically. So as I'm describing this, what I'd like for you to do, I sure hope this works. This was in my head, this was going to work. I wanted to make sure that you could see that. And the other part is to look at the second question is, were you raised in a collectivist culture? So were you raised in a culture where people put the group over self? Cohesiveness, and in this case, common goals describe this culture. So I'm going to stay on this slide for a little bit, because I'll tell you, in a collectivist culture, and this is where my friend was coming from, the Russian culture is definitely more collectivist than individualistic. In the United States, more individualistic of a culture. It's okay to brag. It's okay to raise your hand and talk about yourself. It's okay to get the most valuable player in the team award. In collectivist cultures, that would really be looked down upon. It would be difficult for someone that receives such a wide and broad group praise. They would be probably a little bit embarrassed. So thanks for the 10 of you that are jumping in and reacting. I also kind of want to see what's in the comments here. So what cultures were you raised in? And if you can't get to this, go ahead and just write this in the comments. I'm just curious. So this whole concept of "don't draw attention to yourself" also comes from, we need to be humble, we need to not speak up as much, but that really comes into conflict with us promoting ourselves and talking about our strengths. Let me tell you an example of this. One of my MBA students several years ago, her name was Chai. She would say, like the tea, which I thought was cute. She was trying to build a story around talking about herself. And she was specifically talking about why she was interested in getting into brands. And she was in brand management, in marketing. So I said to her, "What distinct story do you have to tell that has you stand out from others?" And she said, "Well, in my culture, that's not something that it's looked down upon." But I said, "But tell me the story. How did you get attracted to being interested in promoting brands and connecting with brands?" And she tells me the story of her parents were immigrants, and she came to this country. She started, I think it was between middle school and high school, or maybe she moved during middle school. And they were immigrants and came from a part of the world where they were not as affluent as the children and the families in the school districts where she landed. And she remembers distinctly, and this is interesting because I remember this happened to me at that age, where everyone was wearing brands. At the time, she said it was Uggs and North Face coats. And if you look at our college campus, it still is. But it was interesting uh, that she realized the important impact that brands can have on young people, and how they can influence their values and their beliefs. I thought that was really interesting. And it was okay for her to tell that story and how she was connected. Thanks for the ones of you. I see many more of you were raised in an individualistic culture. So this may not be as much of an issue of drawing attention to yourself. So, as you think about this, and for the ones of you that are from collectivist cultures that may say it's okay for me to draw attention to myself, think about this next story that we hear, this next quote: "Let your actions speak louder than words." How many of you have heard this? I'm going to wait for a second and let you jump into the comments. How many of you have heard, "Let your actions speak louder than words"? So pretty much, don't brag, the same concept again. I'm going to sneak in and look at some of my notes here too. So if this happens, you will, in a way, hope that people will see you and will look at the value that you're bringing. But if you're not the person to communicate that and talk a little bit about what your latest project is, you're not going to be as visible. And I have to tell you, I looked this up so I could draw it interesting here for you. I recently watched a very interesting course by award-winning author Mel Robbins on visibility. Actually, it was on confidence. And one of the concepts that she talks about is visibility. What are you doing to be visible? What are you doing in the workplace to showcase your talent without being too braggadocious? Because nobody likes a person that just wants to talk about themselves all the time. So you may have been raised in a culture that said, actions speak louder than words, but I challenge you to think about what you are doing to stand out. So in this next visual, what I will do is share with you another poll, because I think this visibility piece is so incredibly important as it relates to us working from home. So I have here, if you're working from home, how are you staying visible? What things are you doing? So I'm going to let you read through these. Pull out your phone, either click into the QR code or go into the Slido comment. Let me see some of the comments here too. Laura, thank you so much for joining, my fellow LinkedIn instructor and friend. Deeds, not words. Absolutely. Suffragist quote. Yes. So deeds, not words. That doesn't work all the time. Setting up multiple businesses. Sabata is saying you get fired sometimes. Maybe. Yeah. Very much a family learning. Courtney, thank you. I have two children. Melina is 20 and Alexi is 18. And it's been very interesting to raise them in this culture in the US with the values and beliefs and background that I have being Greek, and how these are different sometimes from what I remember. So many of you are saying, attend meetings to stay engaged. By the way, just recently I went to a meeting and I couldn't stay for the whole meeting because there was a conflict with something, but I made sure for the amount of time that I stayed, I kept my camera on. I wanted to literally be visible. How many times do we attend meetings and people can't see where we are? So checking in with your boss or checking in with people that are running projects on the team. Asking for one-on-one time is another important. You probably know this by now, but the answer is do all of these things. That is really important. And the last one is ask to be on stretch projects at times, or projects that are going to give you more visibility. Personally, in the Kelley School of Business, several, maybe 10 years ago, I was given a task from one of our former deans to manage a position of people that were guests and leaders in residence. And I have to tell you, I thought, oh my gosh, I need this, like I need a fork in my eye. But it has been the one assignment that for me has allowed me to meet a lot of our people in our school and meet some very interesting people in general too. So that's the course. If you want to check out Mel Robbins' course, and some of the things that I'm posting are definitely, you can see them later on in the feed. And so I will also keep open this specific voting that you have. So don't let action speak louder than your words. Actually, let action speak louder than your words, but actually involve those and inform people about what you're doing and how you are relating as well. So I shared a little bit about visibility. One of my next ones, and I guess a favorite one that I have that I don't follow, I would say, is don't ask too many questions. Well, guess what? If you don't ask questions, especially if you're new in a position, if you are new on a team, if you're new in a country, or if you're new to anything in an activity, the only way you're going to to figure things out is if you ask, and it's okay to ask. In the latest Stronger newsletter, I had a whole concept about asking and seeing it sort of as a training regimen where you have to build your asking endurance and build your asking muscle and make some tough and strong asks. So on the asking piece, I would say, as you look through this, what is the question that you've asked? I wanted to say, they say that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Is that the term that we use in the United States? Or maybe jump in and tell me a few more here. In Greece, we say rotondas pastiboli. Without asking, you don't get to your destination. By asking, you get to the town or the city, but it really means that to get anywhere, you have to ask. So don't listen to if you were raised with this. Um, you're going to get fired if you ask too many questions. Now, you want the questions to be credible questions. So let me look here. I've got a lot of things going on, and I want to make sure that I share all the right ones with you. So, on the asking two different questions, here's another question I have for you as it relates to the Slido. I'm going to transition it forward so I can get to ask this of you. It's about asking questions. Let me look at this here. And we will move it ahead to the next question on the poll that I have for you is another part about culture. Oops, not this one. Let's move to this question. Sorry. Doing a live all by yourself is a little challenging. So back to the culture of asking questions, a status focused culture. Some of us are raised in a status focused culture where we respect authority, powerful people try to stand out. So there's more focus about this sort of not standing out. And then an egalitarian culture where there's respect for equality and powerful people try to blend in. And in a way, there wouldn't be a problem. For example, at times asking a question in a meeting of a person that is at a higher position than you, in many cultures that are higher in power distance, that is looked down upon. You don't ask a person at a higher level than you a question, especially in front of others. Or if you ask a question, you may not want to seem, if in a high status culture, you may seem weaker if you ask a question in this way. So I want to look at the comments and see kind of what's on your mind here. Credible cultures questions give a culture shock. I'm not sure, Sabata, what that means. Maybe you can explain a little bit. There's no such thing that is a stupid question. Absolutely, Christina. However, on the questions, I would recommend if you are sort of that new kid on the block, you preface each of your questions with one or two things. The first one shows your ability to learn and your interest in learning. I tell my students always when we travel overseas and they sit down with business leaders and they want to know about the business to showcase that they've done some of their homework. So they say, we looked at your materials and it was interesting that you stated this. Tell me a little bit more about it. That is asking a question by saying, I've done my homework, help me understand. So it's kind of it exposes some of your intentions. Another thing it can do, it can compliment. You can compliment someone by asking a question. Is to say, I see that you received this award. That's fantastic. What was the marketing budget around getting when you received that around and getting all that visibility? Because you could ask a direct question and saying, what was your marketing budget last year? But if you ask a question and build some rapport with the person that you're asking the question of, it's going to be a lot easier for you to do that. So let me see here if we have some other comments, mostly ask out of curiosity. Again, you're not going to learn about some things unless you do ask questions. So back on I'm going to leave this poll up because the next piece with culture that influences that is we hear this a lot. Don't speak unless you're spoken to. Or another one has been is children should be seen but not heard. Did any of you grow up in some of these cultures too? I'm looking at my notes here to be sure that I'm covering everything. So this whole thing about questions, if we have been raised in a culture that kept us from asking questions, I would recommend that we try to practice and overcome that. Satish, thank you for asking that question because you're giving me tips for asking a stranger. So, Satish, I'm going to post this question up here because it's great, and there's a lot of a lot of spinning plates in the air. So I didn't get to post some of your questions, but I've posted a class, or I have published a class called "Starting a Memorable Conversation," and in that class, I say. Let me keep this up here too. In this class, I recommend that you observe first. So if you're approaching a stranger, you and say that you do want to strike up a conversation. First, you want to make sure that they are approachable. So if they're looking at their phone or reading, you don't want to interrupt them. And then you make a comment, or you a common comment about the setting or the environment that you're in, and then you maybe ask an open-ended question so you can get a conversation going. So don't speak unless you're spoken to. The whole concept of this course that I'm posting here came from my friend who was in the elevator with a high level administrator at the university. And she said, "It's so sad he doesn't know my name." And I said, "Shame on you. You should be the one to create the conversation and the interaction so he knows who you are." So when Satish says, "Is it any tips for approaching a stranger?" First, I would say make sure you're not intruding. But it's good practice in asking questions when you just approach strangers and say, "Would you happen to have the time?" Anymore, we don't ask people for the time because everyone has their phones that they look up on the time. But I do really believe that that is good practice to do. And I see here, I love this. I'm seeing some of these posts that some people said. Takita said, "Closed mouths don't get fed." That's the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? I love it how you relate to that specifically. So if you have time, check out this course. I would recommend that you think about it, because as we raise our children and as we have been raised, at times we may not be thinking that some of this stuff is impactful, but I would say it absolutely is. And it's important that we get to think about that. So let me know what other questions you may have, what other things that you've heard in being raised. Some challenges are being, as a leader at 42, having to supervise a 60-year-old Sabata. Yes, that is a common situation that happens. We have a lot of our undergrad students that go into the work world, and because maybe they're so proficient in the tech and data analytics or whatever they may be, they may end up supervising people who are older than them. And I would recommend that you see this from a standpoint of being empathetic and understanding of a situation, and trying not to be incredibly direct. If that is your style, you need to maybe flex your style to be a little softer and not come across as very authoritative, because that difference in power distance, as we talked about, may be a little challenging. I kind of want to go back to say many of you were raised in a status focused culture, so you may have a harder time. The ones of you that were raised in that culture may have a harder time telling somebody else that is younger or older than you what to do, because you were raised not to do that, and that would be difficult. So let me see here. Yet you must lead, especially a global team on Zoom. That's extremely challenging, and it will take you more time, Sabata, as you say, to spend more time one-on-one on the phone and relate with others to build that relationship. It's easier to give some feedback if you or build or try to understand the person before you build that relationship. Christina says there are challenges to work for someone when you have a higher degree and more experience than they do. The conversations there, Christina, is just having a playing field, open conversation, and saying what can we do to work better together? What are the common results that we want to achieve, and how can we get there? And that's part of kind of keeping the communication open and connecting with that other person in that direction too. So I highly would recommend that. I'm kind of rolling through the concepts here. The summary of all this, Martina Guinness says, high context versus low context. I learned that from you. That's true. We in the United States were more egalitarian culture in a very low context, which means we explain a lot of things in detail, and we depend on a lot of the written word. And in many other parts of the world, a lot of the meanings are hidden behind the meanings, and it's a little bit more difficult to translate and understand. So I talk about quite a lot of this in courses that we have. So I see some of you are corresponding and relating here. I have just to share one more question that I have for you is because I want to know, as we connect with this, we talked about working in the work world. I would love to know in a word or two, just in 36 minutes of 26 minutes of conversation, what's the one, or in a one word or two, one thing that you will do differently as a result of this LinkedIn session? I'm always also trying to find out. Let me see. That wouldn't work if I didn't post it for you. Yikes. So if you are on the poll, you can see it. But if you're not on the poll, here it is. As a result of this session, what's the one thing that you will do differently? Maybe you'll ask a question, maybe, and you can share this in the chat too. Any idea on asking a question to a deaf person? They're hearing employed. So they are hearing impaired. Is that what you're saying, Milad? I don't know if you are asking a question about working with a person who is hearing impaired, then you can write that in an email or write that in a chat. So preface questions, as I said, again, preface questions with what you may be doing from a standpoint of complimenting or connecting with the person that you're dealing with and building your credibility as you do that. So let's see here. Someone says from Brooklyn, you live in Illinois. Turn on my camera more frequently. Thank you. That is an important thing to do. And some of you said here, let me see here. One person said, ask informed questions. And give yourself credibility. When you get started, you can say, I read this, so I know this. How does this relate? Or what's your opinion? And if you ask open-ended questions based on what some of you had said initially, is trying to get information from the other person and trying to get to know them, asking open-ended questions will help you with that too. Take people with me, Sabata says. Okay, I need to read the rest of the conversation to connect with that. It's always my goal to try to stay in the range of 30 minutes because I know many of you have other things going on. Be more outgoing, reevaluate, learn, and implement. Very good. So a lot of this and a lot of the communication experiences and or experiments, and so it takes more time for you to be able to build your skills and build your muscles. Speaking of building skills, in January, I will be very strategic in opening one of my favorite courses as balancing introversion and extroversion in the workplace. So I've done this course with my dear friend and colleague, Brenda Bailey Hughes. So we are going to be having a discussion and actually bringing some of the learners into the discussion and doing some of these interactive activities that you saw here. I wanted to share some of them with you. Now, in the meantime, let's see, we've got some more here. Learn and implement meaningful questions, practice asking questions. Yes, go into the LinkedIn newsletter that I share. I think I put it up on the banner earlier, and read this specific one on asking questions, or the latest one is on asking questions. So again, I want to leave you with follow me on LinkedIn. The Stronger newsletter comes out once a month, and I try to cover topics that are very specific to communication. I'll leave you with that, and I'll show you what I am going to wear when I teach my cycling classes next week, just to be festive and to encourage you to bring some fun and festivity in your life, and wish you, these are crackers where you pull them apart and there's prizes inside, like a rubber ducky doll. Fun stuff. Have a great holiday season. Thank you so much for attending. And I'll answer some of your questions in the broadcast in the link that we have here. Again, connecting is so important in this diverse and very remote world at times. Have a great holiday season, and thanks for jumping in. Bye-bye.